Welcome back to Damn Parenting, the podcast for international families raising kids, cultures, and questions right here in the Netherlands. I'm your host, Eva, and today Mimi from Growing Up Multilingual is back on our mini-series, and we're talking about a question I think I hear quite a lot. Why won't my child speak back to me in my home language? If that's been echoing in your head lately, take a breath. You're not alone. And no, we're not doing it wrong. So often we focus on exposure, more books, more songs, more screen time in the home language, thinking that that's going to be the answer. But what if I told you that exposure is just the beginning? Today we're going deeper into connection, motivation, and the emotional roots of language. Why do some kids understand the language perfectly but never speak it? And what's actually encouraging them to use it freely and joyfully? We'll talk about what the research says, how much motivation really works in bilingual children, and most importantly, how we, as parents, can create the kind of environment where language becomes alive. Let's get into it. Hey, Mimi.
Hi, very nice to be here. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us again. This topic is, I think, something that touches so much of us. Is why doesn't our child want to speak back to us in our home language? And why is just more exposure not actually enough for children to actively use? Can you help explain this?
Well, this is a huge topic, and passive bilingualism, which, like children who are passive bilinguals, receptive bilinguals, they understand what you say to them, but they would rarely respond to you in the target language. And it's a huge topic, but one of the things that we've been told is that the more exposure we provide, it's just going to work. And of course, providing as much exposure as possible is a fantastic thing, but exposure alone is not enough for them to start using the language if they don't have a need, if they don't have any motivation whatsoever to use it. So one thing about language we need to think about when we talk about this topic is the fact that language is not just cognitive. Language is emotion, language is relational, and language is social. So if it's a younger child and if we're talking at home and just in our home language and it works, we can steer them a little bit more easily, but as they grow up, it becomes more and more difficult to do it. But one thing that we need to ask ourselves, no matter which stage our kid is in, is what actually gets them speaking. And as I said before, it's motivation, is the actual need to use the language. Because if you think about yourself as well, speaking multiple languages, and you have languages you feel more confident in, you have languages you don't feel so confident in. And of course, it takes more energy, it takes more cognitive effort to practice or communicate in the language that you don't feel as confident in. When a child has a couple of different languages and that they know that they can easily use the language that they feel more confident in, why should they try and use the other language? What is going to be their motivation to use it? If grandma has an ice cream and if grandma doesn't speak any other language, for example, that's a motivation that is fantastic. And your child will try and piece a sentence together to respond and to address their need in this language. And everything that they've acquired by you speaking to them from all the exposure that they got, it's going to start coming out. But what can we do? We can do multiple things to stimulate them more, but meaningful connection. We've been talking about connection quite a bit during our conversations on your podcast. And this one is not going to be any different because connection is also a big one in this regard as well. And this kind of, the moment of this moment matters. I'm in the moment and I feel seen and I feel heard also means a lot for your child. And as a matter of fact, children are far more likely to use language when they feel emotionally safe. We've said this multiple times before that children who feel emotionally safe are also better learners. They're more likely to use the language when the language feels relevant to their world. And your bond with your child is paramount. It's the most important thing. You build on this foundation. And it's the most important thing to strive to. If you ignore language goals or academic goals, first and foremost is the bond, the emotional bond that you form with your child. And of course, exposure matters. It's not irrelevant, just the opposite. It's super relevant, but you need to pair it. You pair it with need and creating meaningful moments for speaking. It needs to be relational. They need to be able to connect with the need to speak a language.
What are some practical ways to create a need moment? and the emotional safety that invite language use?
There are lots and lots of things that we can do. A couple of things is creating one-to-one time in the home language. So quiet, distraction-free moments, leave your devices to the side, and maybe for starters, try to use moments that are already strong bonding moments like bedtime or morning routine or bath time, or if you have like slow afternoon moments or weekends, these are fantastic. And then you can start building from there. Those are fantastic moments to utilize because there is no pressure, there is no expectation, and you're focused on doing something else. And then it's a fantastic moment to utilize for language development by creating connection. And the stakes are not high because children don't feel put on the spot. It's not an exam or something along those lines. It's very, very informal and emotional. You can follow their lead, switch it up with play. And another important one is to make it meaningful for them and not for you. So whatever they like, try to do it with them. If you want to tackle, for example, a cultural topic, think about what they might like. For example, is it music? Is it dress up? You want to address a cultural topic, then don't start with big things. Start with typical songs, typical dances, start with traditional clothing. Is it maybe colors that they're interested in? Then, traditional clothing usually has a lot of colors and different patterns. Try to use what they're interested in to make it more meaningful for them, to create a need for them, and show real interest and connect with them. Even if it's a short amount of time, try to make eye contact and try to watch your tone, how you're talking, how you address them, because children feel a lot more. They don't really analyze logically what's happening. They pick up all the emotions, all the vibrations, and they work with this and they form impressions based on this. So whatever you do, no matter how you address them, just make sure that your message is clear. This is a safe space. You're allowed to try, you're allowed to be wrong, you're allowed to be unsure, and don't push them. If they're not interested, try to create interest. But then if you see that they're retreating, the topic is not really capturing their interest, just drop it and try something else. It's not a win or lose situation.
And how can we balance cultural goals with our children's current world and interests without actually turning language into this whole performance?
This is a good one because we need to meet them where they are and try to build the relevance from there. And I hear this often. I really want my child to connect with my culture, and I really want this to be relevant for my child as well, but they're not interested and all they care is about Peppa Pig or Paw Patrol or whatever is currently popular in the world. I have the same struggles, and I bet every parent has very, very similar struggles along those topics. So make it relevant first for them and then build from there. Make them feel that you understand their world, and then they start bringing your world into their world gradually. For example, you have a child who really likes baking. Like my daughter loves cooking shows. At 6 years old, there are those shows where you have to guess, is this a real cake or not a real cake? And it's really, she's squealing and really feeling how the contestants are feeling. She's so excited. So if you have a child who's excited about those things, share with them. And then maybe try to introduce them to some local desserts from your country and use your language to talk them through the recipes. And happens to us all the time. I say in Bulgarian, oh, we need some flour. And she said, oh, what does this mean? And then you show her the flour. So you are using different modes of presenting the language, using all their repertoire to show them what you mean, because they will not know all the words, but it sticks. It sticks more. And in those moments, they're so much more likely to talk to you because you're not only giving them your full attention, but you're also sharing into their passions and what they're interested in. There is a lot of research around this topic. Scientists like Döpke or De Hauer, there is a lot of research around the fact that how we talk to our children, how we address our children, has a very big impact on whether they will speak or not speak. And if we try to tweak a little bit. And I'm not talking about, doing a complete wipe and trying a lot of new things and redoing everything. No, I'm just talking about little tweaks and trying out different things. So trying to adapt to their needs, to what they want, trying to give them undivided attention, trying to make them feel important. It does have a huge effect on whether they would feel open and interested in responding and talking back in the target language.
I have to say, personally, at dinner time, if we're sitting around having a chat, and obviously as parents or as adults, like we're just having a conversation, and a child has to learn how to be part of a conversation. It's that frustration that I sometimes wonder, am I suppressing her interaction in it?
I know exactly what you mean, and I'm trying to think about it. And I think this is a very subjective matter because it's always based on the situation. Because there are interactions where you need to finish your train of thought to let somebody else say something, but there are other interactions that you totally can let people speak and, let's say, interrupt you in the middle of your thought process, and then you can circle back to this. Both are good ways to deal with it because both are interactions that require different types of discourse. And this is also a way for them to learn turn taking in conversation, because sometimes you need to wait. Other times it's okay, but then you can sort of point her to ways to how do I interrupt a conversation, and then how do I do it respectfully without butting in, to put it bluntly. And this is how we learn, because I do both with my kids at the dinner table, depending on the situation and depending on the requirements of the conversation.
There's a difference with talking to my partner and having her overhear a conversation. So she's learning obviously different vocabulary in the language that we're speaking. It's also just really hard because you want them to learn the social etiquette of joining a conversation, but equally at the same time, their little brains can't always hold on to what they want to say and they really want to be part of it.
Yeah, and there are different ways to deal with this. And again, it depends on the child. Like you can do little things like hold on to their wrist as a sign of, okay, wait just a couple of moments. I heard you. I saw you. I know that you want to say something, but can you be patient so I can finish my thought? This has been like hit and miss with my children. Sometimes it works great. Other times it doesn't, but it's their excitement as well. And my daughter sometimes when I say, okay, can you let me finish? And she said, no, but I want to say something. And then my son goes, this is not your conversation to say anything. And then you learn how to navigate those things as well. When it's your conversation to say anything, or do you have to butt in and say something all the time? It's really interesting. And then they get exposed to a whole different host of vocabulary as well. Especially if there are older siblings involved.
So I guess we'll just leave it here for today. I guess our child might not be rejecting our home languages. They just might be waiting for the right moment to use them. And more often than not, the moment isn't created by the materials or stricter rules. It's created by us as the parents, sitting beside them, listening, laughing, showing interest in the world, or just having a conversation over the dinner table with our partner. A language doesn't actually grow in pressure. It grows in play and presence and, above all, as you say, connection. So this week, let's try something small and powerful, like carving out 10 undistracted minutes together in the home language, or letting them lead the topic, bugs, stickers, space rockets, whatever it is at the dinner table. And as you say, watch our tone, make it warm, light, even silly. And remember that connection always speaks louder than correction. If this episode sparked something for you, I'd love you to help us grow this community. Follow or subscribe to Damn Parenting wherever you listen. Leave a quick review or rating. It helps most parents find these kind of conversations. And share this episode with a friend or parenting group, especially if they've ever asked, why won't my kids speak back? So thanks for joining us today, myself and Mimi. And as always, stay curious, kind, and deeply connected. Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you for having me. Bye.